I was right. I was right. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. Bill Skarsgård. He was in the, it was rumoured that he's being looked at for a DC role. And we knew it wasn't Brave and the Bold. I said maybe he'll be Lex Luthor. Now, it came down to him and his brother. Are you playing Fallout? It's
What?
just popped up that you're playing Fallout on Steam. You best not be playing Fallout while we're doing this shit.
I'm not.
No, right.
Just...
Anyway. So it's come down to these two brothers, Bill Skarsgård and Alexander Skarsgård. Obviously, Alexander Skarsgård is probably in my... I don't know where it topped out on my movie list last year. The Viking. The Northman. I love that film.
Phenomenal film.
Really great.
I'm so glad. That was I remember because obviously we saw Batman that year, so it was like, oh, it's really hard to put into place which movie would come out on top. Because I loved it. I loved both of them. I thought they were both phenomenal.
Yeah.
So
It's funny, innit, that we were both big Marvel guys, but I don't think either of us had a Marvel film in our top 5 last year.
yeah, I know.
Yeah. But anyway, and Bill Skarsgård, who has had give a phenomenal performance this year in John Wick 4, I'd say probably the best performance of his career. Because he was so intimidating in that.
I wouldn't say that because you're going to be quite shocked at what I'm going to say here. Because he was it, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So I think his performance in that heavily outweighed his performance in John Wick. I think in John Wick he played just, I'm not saying it was generic, but it didn't really, it was a good performance, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like someone else could have done that just as good as him. That's not to say it wasn't a bad performance.
Well, that's like your opinion, man.
But yeah, I just think it was probably a better performance, and I'm not really asked about the It films. I didn't really,
Yeah.
they're not for me.
Well, either way, in John Wick, he was fantastic. He could have been a really cliche run-of-the-mill villain, and he really brought a different level to it. But yeah, like I say, it's come down to these two brothers, and it's gone to the younger brother, Bill Skarsgård. Apparently, he's going to be our Lex Luthor, coming from the same source, My Time to Shine Hello. So, I'll ask you again. Do you think Bill Skarsgård could be a good Lex Luthor?
I mean, he's been playing bad guys now for a while, so he's been playing he played It, and then he played the bad guy in John Wick 4. So I'll give him a little faith. It's a little difficult to see, but I've not really seen him do anything else. Whereas like Lex Luthor is a very different character to the previous villains he's played. I think. I mean, saying that, he's wealthy and rich, Lex Luthor, and so was the character he played in John Wick 4.
I can't get it out. I'm trying to get the pronunciation. It's like good on me, dumb man, or some fucking thing like
something like that. Yeah. So I feel like it's. I'm interested. Yeah. I do like the older brother more personally, just because of obviously.
That is such a good lineage of actors.
Yeah.
The Stellan Skarsgård, the father Eric Selvig, and he's in Dune and everything like that. Obviously Bill, Alexander, and the brother who plays Floki in Vikings, one of my favourite shows. So they have.
I still couldn't believe that when you told me that.
It's a great lineage of it's like a nice acting family. But I'm happy if Bill Skarsgård, if he gets brought out on stage on San Diego Comic-Con, back end of next month, I will not be upset. In fact, I'll be quite happy because this man can act his ass off, and I think this is what we talked about before. It shows James Gunn is going after talent, which has always been Marvel's philosophy as well. Talent first. You know, barely anybody knew Simu Liu. You know, obviously he did Kim's Convenience, but it wasn't a big show. Not a lot of people knew about it. You know, look at most things Marvel do. It's maybe a mix of like big names and you know, smaller names. Look at the casting for the Fantastic Four. They're trying to get two big names and like maybe two smaller names for that. Obviously, rumored casting for Fantastic Four. But I'll say it. I've said it in the last topic. I'll say it again. My new DC philosophy is in James Gunn, I trust. And I know a lot of the Snyder fans aren't going to be happy with anything James Gunn does. Because when I looked at under the casting, there was, you know, it was pretty much like 50-50 of people going, restore the Snyderverse. Get over it. It ain't happening. Yes, I would have liked to have seen where that went after Zack Snyder's Justice League, because I love that film. But it's not happening, so get over it. And I'm not saying you have to embrace right away what James Gunn's doing. I will, because I love James Gunn, and his DC track record is 100%. Look at Peacemaker. Look at the Suicide Squad. You can't say he's done a bad job yet. Well, you can. It's all subjective. But I'm really looking forward to what James Gunn's going to bring now.
I know there's a couple of people that didn't like the Suicide Squad film, you know, the good one that he did. I've spoken to a couple of people and they said they still prefer the first one. I'm just like,
what was
why?
Because no, but that's the cool thing to say. And people who don't have a critical bone in the body. Now, there's people. I'm going to say this. I'm going to sound like a pretentious cunt, so I might not say it, but I'm going to say it because I am a pretentious cunt. You know, fair enough. If that is how you feel about it, that's fine. But I think you can tell with some people that it's not they've made their mind up before they see the film what they are going to say about it. Because he, you know, it was. It's hard to say.
Spit it out.
It's hard to say because I'm going to sound like a cunt, so I don't want to say what I'm going to say. But it's the cool thing to do. You know, see the first one, and then the second film comes out, we're as good as the first one. You know what I mean? It's like that typical.
Well, the thing I don't understand is like when the first movie came out, it was shitted on. Everyone hated it. It wasn't like a revival of the film of like, you know, how like the older Star Wars movies where people went back and watched them. Like, you know, there is some good stuff in it. You know what I mean? Like they got shit on way too hard. The first Suicide Squad movie, it deserved all the shit, and I don't know why people are turning around and saying, "Oh, it's better than the second one." I'm like, how? Like
Well, that. This is why we need to do our DC list this weekend, so we can really figure out where it all ranks. But I can tell you all right now that James Gunn's Suicide Squad will be very high on that list. Do you know how good that film is? This is what I'll say. We saw that film in the middle of the day, on the day it came out, in a relative, because it didn't make a lot of money, in a relatively empty IMAX theatre with people dotted all around. We was getting massive laughing reactions out of just a few people. Sometimes you can have a full cinema, you know, and you don't get reactions like that. And this, do you remember? Like I say, we're just a couple of people dotted around, and we were still getting big reactions from it. So, anyway, but that's maybe just the people in our theatre who enjoyed it. Anyway,
because
DC.
it's the better film.
Yes, it is the better film. DC looks like they're going in a really interesting direction, a really good direction. You know, I'll say it one more time before we move on to Marvel. In James Gunn, I trust. He can do no wrong. Until he does do wrong. And then we'll maybe look at things a bit differently. Superman could come out. It could be a terrible film. Maybe he doesn't know how to do a character like Superman. But maybe he's the perfect person for it.
He definitely does.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, that's what in the interview he did with Michael Rosenbaum. He says he couldn't have done Superman when he was offered it, you know, a couple of years ago. He says his head wasn't in the right place, but he says now it is. So, there we go.